Good morning and welcome back. This is Hans Peter again. Today, as we look at Europe or Germany and the EU, how has it come to pass that a nation as historically significant and once immensely proud as Germany, alongside a wide array of other influential European nations, has found itself so dramatically sidelined and marginalized on the global stage in the span of just a few short decades of modern history? Is it really true that Europe has become irrelevant on the world stage? I mean, the EU, let's take a look at it, created from an idea rooted in National Socialism, more specifically in collaboration with Walter Hallstein. You can feel free to do a deep dive on that. He was a close associate of AH. If you look at the borders of this economic union as they were planned back then, they roughly correspond to what we today call the European Union. Coincidence? Can we all agree, dear friends, that power should flow from the bottom up and not the other way around? Or should it rather be hierarchical, centralized, coming from just a few people? Many years ago, I once saw a report on Arte. It was very fascinating. It was about, the film was called, I think, The Milk Lie. It was actually about how Brussels dictates the pricing policy to the dairy farmers. And without Brussels, they can't set their own prices. They prescribe it. The prices are kept so low, meaning what the farmers receive, that they are dependent on the EU and on the subsidies they receive every year. Of course, these subsidies also depend on good behavior. That means the EU can dictate to you what you have to do, how, where, and when. Which feed, which vaccinations, and all those things. This creates dependency and control. If the price of milk that goes to the farmer were increased by 3 to 4 cents per litre, this dependency on the EU would no longer be necessary. Is that what we want? Is this about freedom or control? Is that really what this is about? Is it about supporting small businesses and taxpayers? Or is it more about creating the bare minimum for existence on which people are artificially kept? Let's look at the facts to consider this in a sober and open way. Then we also understand what the US Secretary of Housing or Commerce, Howard Lutnick, mentioned, that the EU has outlived its usefulness. And Christine Lagarde can start gasping for air and leave the room or not. It doesn't matter because it is what it is. And the truth is the truth. We know that Europe's borders were deliberately and destructively opened. The floodgates, just as described in the Coudenhove-Kalergi plan, look it up, were thrown wide open. Back then, our Chancellor even received an award from this foundation for her good services. The gates were opened wide to destroy our own culture and paralyze the systems. Question mark? The German, he didn't let his guilt complex stop him, and with his passivity, he even encouraged it himself. We let it happen. Meanwhile, our own birth rates have dropped drastically to about 1 child for every 2 parents, so we're halving ourselves. I'll make a separate post about that too. The proportion of white people on Earth was about 38% in 1900. Currently, we're at, take a guess, percent. Because by now, both parents have to work just to be able to afford life at all. And even if you could afford for only one person to work, it was sold to Europeans as a great victory when women put their newborns in daycare, handed over child rearing to the state, just so they could say they have a job. That was called self-fulfillment. Self-fulfillment has something to do with this here. A kind of self-fulfillment for which you pay the maximum tax rate. That's how it goes. The fact is also that the European peoples have been overrun and replaced. I mean, we heard it here on Tucker Carlson's show, where it was said that Merz can't send soldiers to the front because the Muslim share of the population is so high that we can't get any more Germans. European industry has been strangled with even more pointless regulations. There's no other way to put it. Energy costs have been driven up by ideological, environmental, to such heights that they can now only be financed through subsidies from taxpayers' money. European farmers are being crushed by heavy regulations. And then comes this agreement that you're making right now with these Mercosur countries. I think that's going to break their backs for good, break their necks. And in Brussels, this is being celebrated as a great victory. You've invented the wrong narrative that Russia has interests beyond Crimea and poses a threat to Europe and the rest of the world. The untrained eye believed that. Putin literally said, "Have you lost your minds? You're dumber than this table I'm sitting at." That's absolute nonsense. Europe sanctioned itself and cut itself off from cheap Russian energy, which powered European industry. The increased dependence on US liquefied natural gas is now a trump card for Trump. That's what Putin said. I'm just quoting. Back then, as we know, the sea crisis and the lockdown really destroyed smaller businesses one after another. In addition, our belief system of Christianity has been infiltrated and systematically dismantled piece by piece, including all of its values, the ones that stand for true Christianity. Christian Zionism and the adoption of Islamic culture are promoted in the name of tolerance, while one's own cultural values are no longer lived or even allowed to be expressed. All kinds of belief systems are promoted, while our own is slowly being removed from public life, quietly and silently. This makes us rootless and causes us to lose our cultural identity. If we lose our identity, we lose ourselves. For example, take a look at my posts 378 and 332. Patriotism, the love for one's own country, has been sold and stigmatized as extremism. We are supposed to be ashamed of ourselves, while others relentlessly attack and try to dismantle us. I know, right now I'm speaking pretty bluntly. It all kind of sounds as if the secret plans of certain powerful people are finally starting to work out, exactly as they hoped. Presidents of European countries that hardly have any economies left and are doomed to decline because of their own doing. Now they presume to criticize and defame those who want to save their own country. It's despicable, almost unsurpassable in its perfidy, and yet so many still haven't understood and continue to defend this system. They complain about others, like Trump, for example, want to lecture the world and don't even look at their own situation, their own doorstep, which could hardly be dirtier. Trump is calling for the imprisonment of the Somali congresswoman from Minnesota, Ilhan Omar, who is demonstrably involved in and responsible for a fraud of more than 19 billion US dollars. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. The total amount is probably much higher. The Democrats are hollowing out the country and destroying it from within, just like Europe. Only now America is paying attention. They are exposing it, directing focus onto it, revealing and pursuing it, while at the same time, the whole thing continues to be promoted in Europe, which prevents any action. It's the same playbook, the same blueprint, just with different protagonists. Those who want to clean things up are the ones being smeared. They even want to prevent them from doing so. But it is becoming increasingly visible how their globalist, insidious, and satanic world is collapsing. The only problem is that the damage And this is the real issue because it might still be possible to save it. The damage that has been done in Europe, especially in Germany, in the meantime, is incredible. It is extremely severe, very extensive, and hardly repairable anymore. The country is divided, poorer than ever. Take a look at the median income and household wealth. Hardly any self-confidence left. Freedom is a foreign word. Censorship on the rise? It is politically completely paralyzed. And what we see here, these are all just actors. Europe is becoming less and less important in the global game. The damage is more than just painful. I think they've long since passed the point of just getting a black eye, as we say. Look, first the people have to find themselves in their own identity again. That is the most important thing of all. Because otherwise, they won't have the strength to get out of there. Those who like to give must be especially good at setting boundaries. Because those who take no boundaries, we can see that. On a small scale, as in the large, above as below, left as right, Germany and Europe, must once again set more national boundaries, establish itself in its own God-given quality as a people, and assert itself. We need to promote families and children again, industry, our Christianity for sure, and our sovereignty. What do we see on the other side? In America, inhuman frauds are being revealed at the expense of many people, taxpayers, but also at the expense of the state itself. One could almost say that the United States of America has fallen victim to a communist, leftist, democratic agenda in which all the money was funneled into NGOs. I've made enough posts about this just recently. Just recently, it was estimated that the assets of NGOs in America amount to $13 or $14.1 trillion. In English, that's trillion dollars. They are more powerful than states. And all of that is former taxpayers' money. What do you think the tax rate in every country in the world would be if all these criminal and corrupt practices no longer existed? The governor of Minnesota, Walz, but also Frey, who of course support this, the incredible violence, they even call for violence against federal police officers to cover up all their dirty dealings. And they stage it. They have no other choice. We also see in the media, I hardly think this is being reported in Europe, how in fact from China and other countries, also the country with the little I and so on, organizations are funded by these to finance uprisings. These are funded uprisings for funded agitators who sow discontent and chaos. That's what you can do. Nothing else. Create chaos. The scheme of using the issue of mass immigration, for example, is at the heart of the Democratic Party's power. It is a matter of survival for her. If they lose that, they also lose the money. They know that if the government under Donald Trump is successful in combating mass immigration and fraudulent NGOs, then they will have dealt a generational successful blow against the Democrats. That was and still is the Democrats' plan, to destroy the country from within. Taxpayers' money is laundered as much as possible, distributed to NGOs so that the world is plunged into chaos and they can line their own pockets. This nightmare really seems to be bursting over there now. All I can say is good. For example, Nicole Good, who was killed by ICE federal agents, crossed state lines. That's a fact. She deliberately and intentionally obstructed the work of the ICE agents, that is, the federal police, and she caused harm. That was her own decision. But now she's being made out to be a victim. Just like this Pretty. Bad actors like Mark Ruffalo. In the US, I just saw they call the federal police and Trump the evil ones. I don't watch any movies from him anymore. While they glorify Nicole Good and even make pins with the inscription, "Be Good," I find that appalling. I mean, honestly, Nicole Good, did he ever bother to look at what she actually did? Who she is? A woman, a Democratic agitator, a woman who was charged with domestic violence and child abuse. A woman who decided to throw her oldest children out of the house instead of kicking out her partner, who put out cigarettes on the arms of her children. Guys, sometimes I really get the feeling that this mentally disturbed mob is, to a very large extent, made up of soulless NPCs. That's the only way to explain it. It can't be explained with logical, rational common sense anymore, nor with emotions. When people protest, they take to the streets peacefully, but they don't loot federal police cars, break into gun safes, take out weapons, or cut off the fingers of federal agents. Guys, and the predator had a loaded weapon on him. The Democrats in Virginia have now formally introduced a new piece of legislation that would completely abolish and eliminate the mandatory minimum sentences for rapists, individuals convicted of manslaughter, attackers of police officers, those found in possession of child pornography, as well as various other violent crimes of all kinds. We see it, we know it, it's no longer happening in secret. This is sick. But now Trump has made an incredibly brilliant and forward-thinking move, for which he really ought to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. That's my personal opinion. Trump has brought peace to Gaza. Now, he has established the Gaza Peace Committee. That's the Board of Peace. I've already made several posts about it just recently, the day before yesterday, with Hans Su Hans. Check it out. Definitely check it out. We laid out the maps again. It's incredible. Countless countries are involved. Putin was also invited, which is a significant step. Trump has just internationalized Gaza. And by creating this peace committee, under the leadership of the United States, with the support of major global powers, Gaza is no longer something that can simply be wiped out. It can no longer simply be occupied or absorbed. That's over. A brilliant move. Now we're truly entering a completely new timeline of world events, dear ones. The endlessly repeated patterns of humanity's enslavement are coming to an end. The levers of the dark powers no longer work because more and more people can see it. Trump is deliberately putting them in the media spotlight as well, and shows us, true to the motto, I can't just tell you, it won't help you, you won't understand. You have to see it, you have to sense it, you have to feel it, because then you'll understand. You can tell people countless times what is really happening, but they don't perceive it. Do you know what I mean? They have to see it with their own eyes, experience it, feel it, and sense it. And that's exactly what's happening now. How far this will have to go, we'll see. Maybe old systems will first have to collapse in a painful way before new or parallel ones can be installed. How? That's exactly what's happening right now with the Board of Peace, isn't it? Or the EU. Let's stick with the EU. They've just announced a so-called free trade agreement with India, celebrated endlessly. Unfortunately, most people watching this on TV don't know what it actually means. Oh, a free trade agreement with India, that's great. Now we're trading with India. What most people don't know is what it really means. A free trade agreement only makes sense, or can make sense, if both partners are on equal footing, right? That's just simple logic. Simple logic. Simple economics. But if one of the partners has sabotaged their own energy supply, maintains a climate dogma, over-regulates everything, and imposes sanctions, and this over-regulation abolishes and drives away its own industry, then there is no balance, but rather dependency. You are doing this simply because you can no longer compete effectively, and you desperately want to cover up your own inevitable downfall. India brings young jobs at low costs, state protection for industry, which we don't have here, and rapidly growing manufacturing. Europe has high energy prices that were deliberately and artificially created. Recently, they even demolished a power plant worth 3 billion, financed by German taxpayers' money. It was only 6 years old, but they did it just to push through an ideology. Europe has extremely heavy and complex regulatory burdens that are so incredibly challenging that producing domestically, I would say, is nothing short of a truly heroic feat. This agreement does not make Europe more competitive. Do you know what it does? It makes Europe irrelevant for production. Manufacturing will move east, value creation will move east, skills and know how will move east. That is the bottom line. And let me tell you something. They know this very well. How much longer will this be tolerated? Europe will be left only as a consumer of what it can no longer produce itself. Free trade between unequal partners does not create balance, my friends. It brings about the downfall of one of the parties involved. India couldn't care less. For them, of course, it's profit. The system that many advocate has already failed. It is collapsing in on itself. The architecture is damaged. It's crumbling at every corner and edge. I just made a new piece about this with Catherine Turner. Go check it out. About the crumbling of the old system. The balance of power is shifting dramatically right now. All these current statements and remarks are now being noticed more, and they do not indicate an impending victory. Even if they like to present it that way verbally, euphemistically put, instead, it shows their inability to let go of these patterns and old ways of doing things. That's what it shows. If you take a closer look and see beyond the facade, okay, think outside the box. And of course, this also applies to the entire financial architecture. People still have their savings accounts at their local bank and don't consider how they could better prepare for their own future and create alternatives. You should diversify there as well. There are still many people who cling to the old ways. I know there are a lot of people who say cash is the only real thing. They think it's the only real thing. But honestly, you all know, cash is, in reality, just a part of the currently collapsing financial system. The euro is an IOU, a promise of payment that has been postponed to doomsday. It is centrally created and out of nothing. Whether paper or digital makes no difference. The euro is the euro. We will not be able to stop it, the digital. We won't be able to stop cryptocurrencies. Humans strive for progress, and that should happen. We can't prevent that either. We can only influence how consciously we use it. At some point in the next few years, we already see it in many countries, it's common practice. I pay all over the world with crypto debit cards. In the future, making simple payments will be much easier through apps, wallets, or smartwatches, something we won't be able to stop anymore. But who says that's a bad thing? People are afraid of change of any kind, even if it would actually set them free. Why? Because they have to let go of old patterns. Because they have to learn something new. Because they cling to what they're used to. And that's exactly what the dark side takes advantage of, pinning us down with it. When it comes to digital money, there's really only one question we should ask. A question that truly matters. How do we handle it consciously? Question mark, end, period, that's it. Are we centralizing it again? Are we putting it in the hands of a few, giving them the power to control us? Will we once again tolerate a system where money is created out of nothing? And for this money, which previously belonged to no one, will we agree to a supposed repayment? And even pay interest on top of that? And even if not everyone wants to hear it, I have to keep emphasizing and repeating it. Decentralization and deflation are the only solutions to this dilemma. And countless countries have now recognized this. And they are responding positively. Many large corporations and asset managers are getting involved. States are now using it to secure their reserves. And yet, many people are still complaining, bad-mouthing it, and parroting the phrases from Brussels and elsewhere. I'm talking about Bitcoin. Trump has had Bitcoin included in the asset management of the pension fund, allowing Americans to invest in it through their 401k. Now, Americans can build their retirement savings with Bitcoin. He is showing them the solution. He hopes that it will soon become law everywhere. And in fact, bills are currently being introduced everywhere in all states to allow payments with crypto and Bitcoin. After the market structure is passed, my dears, that's how David Sachs put it. He's practically a real crypto czar, you could say. And this David Sachs said, after the power structure is established, the banks will fully enter into crypto. That's exactly what they're all doing right now. Even the German DZ Bank, meaning the Volksbanken and so on, now have their licenses. JP Morgan made a major entry. And mortgage banks like Newrez in the United States are now even offering real estate mortgage loans with Bitcoin as collateral for deposit purposes. They know what it will be worth in a few years. The German DZ Bank, as I said, is now getting involved. They have received their license. Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong says, I think Bitcoin will reach the 1 million mark by 2030. Right now, we're at 90,000. Just think about that. The CEO of Bitwise sees that happening even much sooner. Currently, as I said, it's around 90,000. By 2050, major investment funds and billion-dollar companies see it at a minimum of 2.8 to 2.9 million. That's a conservative estimate. You can do all the math yourself. America is on the verge of passing the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act. The founder of Electron Energy, Rafa Saguri, stated that countries adopting Bitcoin will have more prosperity in the long run. He's right. Strategy continues to buy Bitcoin. Many European countries are now starting to build state reserves in Bitcoin. Bhutan is investing 30% of its GDP in Bitcoin. Virginia is investing 10% of its state funds in Bitcoin. Arizona and other states are following suit. And Germany, what did they do? Sold everything? Great job. Meanwhile, Deutsche Bank has announced that Bitcoin should also be included in central bank reserves. Oh, look at that. They're all telling us in the media. We just have to pay attention. Others, like the state of Louisiana, are doing this by simply buying shares of Strategy, for example, one of the largest holders of Bitcoin in the world. Also clever, for example. BlackRock's chief investment strategist Phil Rosen says that companies view Bitcoin as a hedge against geopolitical risk. We're hearing it everywhere. Even in Davos, it was mentioned. Let me put it another way. When will the very last person finally understand, dear friends, that Bitcoin is one of the most important currencies and one of the most important assets you can possibly have in your portfolio? Limited, not created out of thin air. That's a lie. It is limited. It is decentralized, not controlled or created by just a few. It cannot be controlled. On the contrary, it is not created out of nothing. It is pure energy. Decentralized, governed by all the people who participate in the blockchain. Portfolio manager Christopher Sullivan even stated that Bitcoin will help us achieve a peaceful transition, a wonderful change, like the Board of Peace. When it comes to conflicts between states, there will also be a gentle, peaceful solution in the financial sector. And Bitcoin will help us peacefully exit the fiat system, that is, the paper money system, and it will do so in the most conscious way possible, which could only be available to us in this way. Maybe check out my videos on this topic, 399, 407, and 415. With a bank account, you are only the account holder, my dears. You are not the owner. The bank has full access. They control it. A wallet that is a digital wallet or an account with Bitcoin or crypto belongs only to you. With a regular transfer, banks can refuse to process your transactions, block accounts, freeze funds, seize money, or even decide whether you can buy your child an ice cream. That's not possible with Bitcoin and crypto. It's true freedom in action. And the justification from Brussels that Bitcoin is used for drug trafficking and similar abuses, folks, those are just narratives to keep you from using it. Those are just narratives and nonsensical arguments. because every single transaction is, of course, visible and traceable to everyone in the world on the blockchain. Human trafficking, arms trafficking, and drug trafficking are usually conducted with cash or offshore accounts. We all know that Obama once casually sent 1.7 billion in cash to Iran. Guys, these are all just poor excuses to make people dislike Bitcoin. What we don't need now are any more black pillars, the awakened ones who only see things pessimistically and complain about everything. Those who think they've seen through everything, but offer no solutions and badmouth everything, lumping it all together, still celebrating the old world, full of polemics and sarcasm. What we need now are people who go through life with a consistently positive attitude, who see things, perceive them, work on solutions, but don't let themselves be emotionally trapped. These are the pioneers of our new era, dear friends. The Jedi warriors, and the alchemists, these are the ones with whom the Force may be. A single person's prayer can save an entire village. How true it is. We are more powerful than some are able to believe. What we do. In our community, for example, it's not just about buying Bitcoin. We provide a platform where you can participate in the creation, in the generation of Bitcoin. You are involved. You are taking part in the printing press of Bitcoin. What was previously reserved only for the elite, mining race now brings into your life and into the life of every citizen. It is the first completely transparent, secure, and reputable platform where you can mine Bitcoin with real-time monitoring daily in the app. You can also, every day, withdraw your earnings, and don't even bother looking it up on Google, what's written there. Instead, it's better to watch a beginner webinar, then you'll learn the truth, including about the company, which is actually 20% owned by the ruler, the King of Dubai, created as a vision for the future. Doesn't matter. Mining Race from Liechtenstein is the Telegram channel we have for this. Just last week, I was in Dubai at the annual meeting of the board and the leading minds on board with them. Specifically, it was about coordinating the strategy for 2026. And I have to say, it was incredible what is coming our way this year, what these smart and morally upright minds have come up with to give even more people the opportunity to be part of this amazing concept, to be part of a community that has recognized the opportunity to secure a long-term passive and sustainable income in Bitcoin through Bitcoin mining. Imagine you have a product that gives you a guaranteed share of 114% in Bitcoin mining within 4 months. Not to mention what a Bitcoin will be worth in the future. We started with Mining Raise in July 2025, and in the meantime, we have brought several thousand people to Mining Raise, all of whom are truly super happy. The central bankers stated in Davos that they do not trust the private issuers of Bitcoin and would rather continue to trust the banks. Hup, I thought to myself, yes, JD. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, said, however, that Bitcoin is safer than any bank in the world, and he was right about that. But that's just how it was determined by central bankers in Davos. I had to smile because many people don't understand what he actually said. Either many bankers don't want to understand it, or they deliberately twist it. Because the fact is that he apparently wanted to discredit Bitcoin. I really don't know what's going on in their heads, my dears. In any case, Bitcoin has no private issuers. There are no private entities issuing it. That simply doesn't exist. How do people even come up with the idea to claim that? Thank God after him, Brian Armstrong took the stage. He said he's the CEO of Coinbase. And he countered, Bitcoin is a decentralized asset. So when central banks claim they're independent, well, then I just have to cough. If so-called if central banks are supposedly independent, which of course they are not, then Bitcoin would have to be the most independent of all independents in the whole world. There is no one who can control Bitcoin. It's healthy competition. It's the best safeguard against government debt. When Brian Armstrong said that, people in the audience started to laugh. Just imagine that. As if Brian Armstrong had said, or said something that would make you question his mental integrity or health. Bitcoin is actually one of the most powerful financial tools ever created, and they just laugh about it. And I thought to myself, yeah, for now you're still laughing. But their laughter won't last much longer. Once they realize the seriousness of this asset and they're not on board, he who laughs last laughs best. Ray Dalio is also a financial legend in the US, a hedge fund manager with a personal fortune of over 14 billion US dollars. I mean, people listen to him. He said there, the existing financial system is completely falling apart. And that's exactly what I'm saying too. Granted, I'm not a 14 billion dollar hedge fund manager, but it's absolutely clear and obvious to me that we are right in the middle of the greatest wealth transfer in human history. The financial architecture is being completely restructured, and most people are missing it. We need to talk about topics like capital wars, and that's what Ray Dalio calls it. Fiat currencies are under pressure like never before. And I mean, in Davos, the biggest global players are really present, including Donald Trump, and they are telling the world that crypto and Bitcoin will be the future. And the EU laughs about it. Germany sold its Bitcoins instead of securing them. The EU wants and needs the war to prop up its euro and to cover up a few thousand of its dirty deals in Ukraine. But Russia, Ukraine, and the USA, they'll come to an agreement even without the EU, believe me. No matter how much money they pump into it. I mean, when you look at it, the real provocateur in all of this is the EU. They're the ones who want the war, but it won't end well for them. Who knows what sanctions might still be imposed on the EU if they keep going like this? Dear friends, all the best from the bottom of my heart. It was a long post today. I talked a lot, but I think there were some very important messages in there, maybe something that will make you think, as the saying goes, about what might really be going on. And maybe it also helps to shift our awareness a little bit, just a little bit further. Reprogrammed, so to speak. All the best, God's blessings. Ciao.